For the past month, there have been almost daily protests by students in Iran. Today, the brother of President Khatami broke ranks and said the hardline leadership had to reform or risk the same fate that befell Iran's monarchy. Real power in the country, however, lies with the clerics, not the reform-minded president. Disillusion is said to be rife. Prostitution and drug addiction are a fact of everyday life in Tehran. Our special correspondent Sue Lloyd-Roberts and World Affairs producer Ian O'Reilly got rare permission to report from inside the country, but they were deported for being too curious. Many of their tapes were confiscated, but they smuggled enough out to compile this report.
President Khatami promised Iranians reform and won a landslide victory on that pledge 5 years ago, thanks largely to the under 25-year-olds who make up 60% of the population. Today, these young people are accusing him of betrayal, a message that the Islamic Republic does not want to reach the outside world. Nor do they want us to see the reality of life in Iran. Drive down the wide avenues of Tehran and you see men in cars picking up prostitutes. There are believed to be tens of thousands in the city, and it's a common sight. The authorities confiscated most of this material, but we managed to smuggle out this interview with Layla.
There are even 10-year-olds and lots of 11 and 12-year-olds as well. I started selling sex when I was 11 after I was thrown out of home by my stepmother. But many of the girls have run away from home because they can't bear the lack of freedom. They prefer to be prostitutes than live under the restrictions at home.
Nor do the mullahs want us to know of the millions of young who are turning away from Islam and who want a Western lifestyle.
When we can get drugs, we take them, though the police have flogged us for it. We've even been flogged for walking down the street listening to a Walkman. We want individual freedom. We should be free in our own country.
These are the images which the mullahs have no problem with. A segregated, deeply religious, law-abiding society where a woman is covered in her shroud-like chador. She's encouraged to attend public rallies and shout "Death to Israel." When Ayatollah Khomeini returned to lead revolutionary Iran 23 years ago, he warned the people that Islam does not offer joy. If this is the regime's idea of a weekend day out, you can understand the frustrations of the children of the revolution. It was here on Anti-Israel Day that Fatima approached me, wanting to tell me what life for a woman in Iran today is really like.
None of the young are happy. We should have the right to meet other young people, but we can't even do that. A young person should be able to dress as he or she wants. Even if we go on holiday to the mountains, we have to dress like this. They don't allow us to choose the way we want to live. They treat us as if we had no minds of our own. They force this veiling on us against the Quran and against our will, and lots of other pseudo-doctrines as well. And they've done it not to promote Islam, but to control us for their own political purposes.
You're taking a risk talking to me. Why are you doing it?
Yes, talking to you is a political risk, but we women have had enough. A friend of mine was arrested as a political prisoner simply for taking a photograph, and such prisoners are tortured, sentenced to life in prison and even hanged.
Men and women alike share the public gallows in Iran. There have been over 400 public hangings this year. Nor does the guillotine discriminate. Thousands have been flogged for crimes such as socializing with members of the opposite sex. Hospital wards are filled with mainly female suicide attempts. Self-immolation is the method most frequently used. Women are buried up to their waists in the ground and stoned for adultery. 10 women have been executed this way so far this year. These pictures were taken by members of the clandestine opposition in the last few months. That is, while the outside world believed that President Khatami, who promised reform when he came to power, had been changing things. Mrs. Kulai is an MP and government spokesman for women's affairs.
We are moved from a traditional attitudes towards modern attitudes. So there is a very strong resistance. And maybe there is some inefficient policies towards these kind of activities.
What people in the West find difficult to understand in this country is that your penal rule allows women to be flogged, stoned to death. In this, the 21st century, is this going to change?
Yes, we try to make suitable actions in this respect, and there is many positive.
So it will come to an end?
We hope.
We were lucky to get an interview with a member of the government. The Office of Islamic Guidance controls all journalists, releasing permissions to film to our official translator, slowly, reluctantly, and sometimes not at all. And the refuge for runaway teenagers?
Not yet.
And what about the drugs clinics?
Not yet.
So, with only a few days left on our visas, we left our official translator and we set off on our own. We went to a drugs clinic run on private and charitable funds. There are not enough government facilities to cope with the problem. Doctors here believe there are 6 million hard drug addicts in Iran out of a population of 70 million and from all walks of life. Like this senior government employee who was sacked for being a heroin addict, or this electrician who told me he took to drugs 17 years ago when the mullahs banned music.
There is no fun, no excitement in Iran today. After the revolution, they controlled even innocent pastimes. My brother and sister were arrested, for goodness sake, for just walking down a street together. Music was banned. Drugs are easily accessible in this country. We take them to escape.
The young are especially resentful of the restrictions on their freedom. They're not interested in the lifestyle dictated by the Islamic Republic. When I asked these young men whether they attended the anti-Israeli rally that day, they just laughed.
It's Friday. We're young and we want to have a good time. We'll shout death to Israel when it suits us, but to be honest, we're more interested in fashion.
In the wealthier areas of Tehran, it is noticeable that young people do move around with more freedom. How, for example, do these young girls dare wear so much makeup?
Because the mullahs want to get on with what they want to do, I think they let us get away with more these days, like with makeup and drugs. You wouldn't believe what those mullahs are up to. They import the drugs to create the millions of addicts.
But another young student I spoke to told me that she and her friends were arrested by the morality police a few weeks ago and flogged 80 lashes each because a group of them, boys and girls, had been found together in a private house. What does Mrs. Kulai think of this?
Yes, I know about these realities, but I think we must pay attention to the capacities of change. And we must try to keep the situation in a very gradual manner for change.
So you condone the flogging of women in such circumstances?
I think the process of change is optimistic.
I said, did you condone the flogging of women in such circumstances?
You know, the issue of women in our country is a part of all social and economic and cultural matters.
I'm sorry, perhaps you didn't understand me. Do you agree with the flogging of young women who are found talking to young male student colleagues?
I mentioned to the common perception.
She clearly did not intend to answer. It could be that the reformers do want to meet the expectations of the young and ease up a bit, but their hands are tied by the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, and his group of hardliner mullahs who have the last word. Thousands of students attended rallies in support of a popular lecturer at Tehran University, Hashem Agajari, who dared suggest that people should no longer have to obey the ruling clerics without question. He was sentenced to death for blasphemy. There was alarm at the scale of popular support, and his case is now under review. Student demonstrations have increased over the last few weeks. Their leaders say they all follow the same pattern.
The clashes are provoked by government thugs, the Hezbollahs, and by religious fanatics who attack the speakers and demonstrators. There are plainclothes government agents in the crowd who suddenly produce weapons, handcuffs and walkie-talkies. The kinds of things which ordinary marchers just don't carry. Of course, they're all supplied by the regime.
I wore a chador to smuggle a small camera into the university and meet with a couple of student leaders who helped organize recent demonstrations. They're awaiting trial for inciting civil disobedience. Do they feel betrayed by President Khatami?
His second term is nearly at an end, and he hasn't delivered on his promises, like freedom of speech and freedom of the press. If he can't get these reforms through, he should resign. We want a change in the political system, but without violence. We want a referendum and for the people to decide on the system of government. They may well decide that they don't want the Islamic Republic.
So what happens next?
It's not easy to say, but that will be decided soon. In the next 2 or 3 months, there will be a showdown between the reformers and the hardliners. Even the hardliners admit this.
Akbar asked us to conceal his identity. He's currently in hiding from the police. After leaving the university and the students, we were arrested. 2 days later, 4 plainclothes men burst into my hotel room, and without identifying themselves, they took away our tapes. 2 days later, we've been told we're to be deported tomorrow morning. They've accused us of showing only the negative side of Iran. We think we were trying to report something of the reality. It could be that they wanted us out of the way before the demonstrations which took place after we left. Foreign camera crews couldn't get near. An opposition cameraman took these pictures. It wasn't just students on the streets this time. Of an estimated 8,000 protesters, only 3,000 were students whom police tried to keep confined to their campuses. 200 demonstrators were arrested. With the holy month of Ramadan over last weekend, the mullahs are now bracing themselves for a season of unrest.
Sue Lloyd-Roberts.